Oh, hi, Musa. How you doing?
I'm good. How's it
Good.
going?
Pretty good. So thanks for talking. How long was your power out for?
Not long.
Not long this time.
I think it wasn't long this time, fortunately.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to speak to you. I already wanted to speak to you anyway because we talked 2 years ago on the first anniversary of the revolution about how things were going. So I thought I
Yeah.
would talk to you about that, but also, of course, I know that your brother's story is a terrible story, and I wanted to just if you could explain it to people what's happening. Basically, what's happening generally, and what's happened with your brother.
Okay. That sounds good. Okay. Should we start?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. My brother Abdullah Shami, who works for Al Jazeera Network, was stationed in Rabat Square, where Morsi supporters were protesting his return since his ouster on July 3rd. Abdullah doesn't work in Egypt. He's actually the channel's uh, head of bureau in West Africa. But he was asked to come to Cairo to cover the events in his own country, and he was there throughout the 40 days of Rabaa camp. And on the day of the dispersal, he was arrested along with many people who stayed in the square during that awful day. Basically, Abdullah was charged. Sorry, he was not charged, but he was facing some accusations as a protester who was there, even though it was very clear that he works as a journalist for Al Jazeera. They confirmed that he works for a journalist. Everyone in the authorities know that he's a journalist. When I go to visit him, they know that Abdullah Shami is the Al Jazeera correspondent. Yet they have refused to officially charge him. We expected that he would be with the 20 Al Jazeera journalists or affiliates who had been recently referred to trial, but that did not turn out to be true, and he remains in a 6 month detention now since August 14th, with no official charge and no any legal procedure. And that is what has been most troubling, is that his case has been in sort of a there's actually no case. That is the real trouble, is that every 45 days his detention gets sort of automatically renewed by some prosecutor or a judge who has taken this order from above, and and yeah, that's basically what is happening. And as a result of all of this, Abdullah has decided to begin a hunger strike. It is since 11 days now. He has been on a full hunger strike, protesting this indefinite detention and asking to put an end to it, either to be let go or to be formally charged.
So you confirmed. I think maybe there was some confusion from people trying to understand the case against the 20 people who were mentioned the other day. So you thought at first that he was one of the 20, right?
Yes, we when the news came out that 20 journalists were have been referred to a trial, including the Al Jazeera correspondents in detention, we expected that Abdullah is going to be among them, because he has been there even before the foreign journalists who have been also unfortunately detained. And we contacted some sources inside the government, who did confirm that there was someone with Abdullah's name on the list. On the next day, though, this turned out not to be true, and he wasn't referred to a trial. So like I said, his case remains in this uncertain situation, and there seemed to be no positive end, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand. And he was arrested, just for so people can be clear. He was arrested on August 14th last year, right? During that was the first day of the clearing of the Rabaa sit-in in Cairo, right?
Yes, Abdullah was arrested that day after the sitting was completely cleared by security forces. It was that evening that the very few people who remained alive in that camp were either let go or arrested, and Abdullah was on his way out of the camp with his wife when they got stopped by a military by a military officer who asked for his ID and his credentials. And when Abdullah showed him his passport, he said we will have to make our investigations, and he took him to a police station. And he actually said it's a routine, and you're going to be let go. But that did not be that wasn't the case. He was sent to another place where all the detainees were being kept, and then the 2 days later he called us and said, "I'm being transferred now to Abu Zabel prison."
I guess
And yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and that has been what's been happening during these 6 months. Yeah.
I was just going to say what's a little confusing for people from the outside. I mean, maybe it's not clear to you either. Is why your brother, you yourself, at different stages have been detained while working as a journalist, or even in the year after the revolution while protesting. I think, right?
Yes.
And then able to get out and released. Your younger brother, who's also a photojournalist like yourself, was even detained the other day and then released. What makes your brother's case so different? Is there any clue to that?
I think that the we have to take into consideration the developments that has happened this year. Egypt has always been not the easiest place to cover for journalists, and neither there hasn't been any leadership that actually fulfilled on its promise to protect the freedom of press and opinion. But it has sort of varied depending on the legitimacy of this government and its will to actually clamp on this free speech. And the current government tends to be the most when it comes to cracking down on press. I think this has been the worst we've seen in decades in Egypt. And I have worked as a journalist in Egypt for 3 years now, and this is without doubt the highest level of crackdown that journalists have seen in Egypt. In 2013, Egypt has become the third most dangerous place on earth to be a journalist. There has been at least 5 journalists killed in 2013. Not to mention dozens have been detained. So the development is that there is a new government, there is a military regime with, unfortunately, a huge local support that gives it legitimacy to crack down on dissent. Abdullah's case has to be taken into the larger picture, which is cracking down on dissent and free speech. It is sort of unfortunate for him that he works for Al Jazeera in Egypt, which is the most critical channel against the regime, and therefore this is why the channel has been targeted. Not even since Rabaa, but before that, on the day Morsi was ousted, the channel's bureau was raided right while the speech General Sisi was delivering. So there has been intentions to crack down on speech and in general, but specifically they have been going after Al Jazeera, and this is why Abdullah's case has become different. Is that there are dozens of journalists who have been detained. Some of them have been let go. There are foreign journalists like Mohammed Fahmy, Peter Greste, but Abdullah has been detained earlier for 6 months before that, and they know that in my opinion, they're settling a score with the Qatari channel and the government.
And was he arrested with a colleague from Al Jazeera? Was someone else arrested that day, or it was just him?
No, he was the only one who was arrested that day, but a cameraman was arrested 2 weeks before Abdullah. Mohammed Badr is a cameraman for the Egypt affiliated sort of the branch, the Egypt branch of Al Jazeera, Mubashir Masr, and he has also been detained since. So that makes it 5 journalists, 3 locals, and two foreigners currently imprisoned.
Well, I would have hoped that we'd be talking about different issues more directly, but I mean, also just thinking about this, coming at it from this perspective, and your own personal experiences since being in Tahrir Square in 2011, through all this time. I mean, how does it seem to you now, 3 years later? Does the anniversary mean anything to you? Does it matter, or is it just a distraction?
Well, of course, the anniversary will always mean something to everyone who has participated in it or witnessed it, whether, I mean, not just for the locals, but anyone who has witnessed such an event with such magnitude will always remember what it was like. And this is why people took to the streets that day on the third anniversary, despite them knowing that the government is going to crack down on anyone who does not basically raise Sisi's picture on the streets. Those were the only ones who were safe that day. But and any other march which decided that day to protest for the demands of the revolution, to protest against the current regime, was completely was at a target for the security forces, which used really unprecedented levels of violence, and at least 100 were killed that day. So it does mean, I think, for this generation, and it continues to be the inspiration for the hopes of a better future for Egypt. And the problem is that the current government has sort of been able to, in its way, to rewrite history, and in its way to use the masses for its own agenda, instead of people celebrating or remembering the revolution and pushing forward for the demands, which absolutely have not been met by any government that had followed the regime. They actually were mostly on that day on protesting, or not even protesting, celebrating the regime, and calling for Sisi to run for presidency. And this is how they have been able to make this day, instead of remembering the memory of those who were killed that day, and those who hoped for a better Egypt, to actually use it as a day of propaganda for the military. So this is why it was really telling of the current situation in Egypt, and how things have gone from bad to worse over the 3 years, but especially after June 30th, and with the new reemergence of the old regime, and the new legitimacy that the police and the military had gained, just because they sided with the anti-Morsi protesters. They had sort of started a new slate, and wiped the old one clean, while no actual justice has been achieved. And this is why anyone who has been following Egypt will notice that Egypt has gone through this really steep hill of things getting worse, and like I said, the security apparatus is re-emerging, and the dissent rush from is being crushed, and you barely feel that anything happened 3 years ago.
So does it feel? That's what I was going to ask. I mean, does it feel that it's exactly the same situation as 3 years ago, or does what happened still give you some hope that things will change now in the future?
I think, like I said, anyone
sorry,
who
it
witnessed
broke up.
2011 will always believe that such. Can you hear me now?
Sorry, now I can hear you again. Yes.
Yeah, I think this current situation, which to me is probably even worse than than before the revolution, there remains little hope for those who did witness the 2011 revolution, because it was really something extraordinary. It was something that doesn't happen. That just takes huge will and inspiration, um, and what we saw that day is just not going to be forgotten by those who did participate. And despite rewriting the current attempts of rewriting history and the current attempts to earn a new legitimacy by the police and the military, the my feeling is that this generation is never going to give up. They're not the sort of the generation to just you know step aside and give in to the new order. What 2011 changed in people was most of all the mentality, and most of all it was a revolution inside themselves more than anything. And despite the very, very little changes that we've seen, and what even would be a setback to in these 3 years, you just have no other option to stay positive for the future and hope that one day the people will take things into their hands again. Because if there's anything that we could tell from these 3 years, is that the people do tend to change moods very quickly, and within a year the Brotherhood became changed from the most popular and the most powerful political organization to perhaps the most despised group by the public. And this is how things should be a sign for any regime, that nothing stays as it is. And it's you should not be taken by the picture of the crowds who are raising your picture now, because they did that for so many regimes before you, and that really didn't help them when their time came. The problem is the following regimes always seem to get, what I would say, drunk on this moment and not really look to the past. And the past really should, it's impossible that it gets recreated, despite the serious attempts. But I just cannot believe that this will sort of stay fixed, or the current order will really just dump everything else.
Mosa, I just wanted to ask you also that when our readers first became familiar with you, you were in Tahrir Square. You were one of the people that was helping to document it and explain in English to people what was happening, reporting on things that were happening. But you were reporting from the perspective of a participant. You were an activist. You were a participant in the protest. I know that since then you've also established now a reputation as a very fine photojournalist. I'm just wondering, in the environment that Egypt finds itself in, is there an important distinction between the people who document things as journalists and the people who are activists, or is it part of an activism to be a journalist at this moment? Do you see a distinction there?
I think more than ever, Egypt needs this documentation. And yes, as an Egyptian, you will always have some sort of role, whether you're on the street protesting or documenting, but you just cannot help but have your own values and your own standards, and have your own opinions and things, because this is the country that you belong to, and this is the future that you're trying to help shape for the others. So as an Egyptian, of course, I was there in Tahrir as a protester, and like many millions of young Egyptians who were there. But that my current work as a photojournalist does not stop me from having my own opinions and expressing them freely, and hoping for a better Egypt for everyone. I think that the current government is using media very, very it remains its most important tool. And we've seen how the public and private media has turned into, unfortunately, very, very unprofessional outlets that have really only been broadcasting the only one rhetoric, the only one line that is forced upon by the state, which makes the presence of independent journalists very important. Journalists who are out there on the street, whether they're citizen journalists or professionals, but people who are out there to report what is happening and to try and challenge the current the state media and the state rhetoric, because this is always the most important fight. You know, the images and the videos and the propaganda and the counter propaganda. And this is what, as a professional journalist, I try to do. I do not. I mean, I work for various outlets, and when I go out there on the street, I try to keep my own opinions and my own activism aside, because I am out there to report on what is happening, and without really sticking to one line or rhetoric. And the problem in Egypt, I've always thought, is that the truth is always sort of lost in the middle, and it needs people who are there and who try to push this very this middle, like I said, out for those who are being lost between the state propaganda or the other coin of the other side of the coin, who also report things, but also from one side. We need people who are there to report on what is happening, just for the sake of that, and this is what I hope to continue doing.
Well, okay. Thanks very much, Mosa'ab. That's fantastic. I appreciate you speaking to me so late at night after power cut and everything. And
Thanks, Robert.
the best for your brother. So take
Pleasure.
care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.